I'll call our meeting to order. Welcome to the Monday, July 29th meeting of the ACSD Board. Thanks everybody for coming out. We'll try to keep things cool in here. If hearing becomes a real problem, please say something, and either we'll speak up or we'll turn the AC down, but just soon not do that if we can avoid it. All right, well, let's begin with we don't have our name tags in front of us, but we'll do a quick round of introductions. Amy, if you could start us off.
Sure. I'm Amy Blush. Mary Gill.
Chip Malcolm.
Betsy Tuckleman. Tori Jacobite. Lorraine Morse.
Peter Conlon.
Peg Martin. Jen Newsy. Mary Connie.
Victoria Jennings. Suzanne Buck.
I'm going to make just a slight change in the agenda tonight. Our propane bid discussion will be our first item up after public comment period, which will occur now. As always, we start our meeting with opening for the public to comment. It's an opportunity for you to talk and us to listen. And we would open the floor to anybody right now.
Eisenberger, Ripton. First, I just want to express my gratitude. This is a long process, a lot of work for all of you, and for us to show up to. And that I represent all small school communities. I just want that to be clear. It's not just Ripton. And I'm asking some specific questions that I would like Mr. Conlon to answer directly, or any school board member. Because I think now we're really seeking true answers to our questions at this point. So the first question is, knowing what other options were discussed other than closing schools. So what would it look like for all schools to remain open? Like, was that truly discussed? And if so, what that looked like? How much the IB program and implementation, I know it's quite expensive, and it seems to really be influencing how we're moving forward. So I was hoping to learn numbers around that, and cost for the IB program and how that is influencing the decisions we're making moving forward. Also, defining equity, which keeps being mentioned but still has not been defined. Transportation, which is a big concern. And data, true tax savings. It's thrown around a lot that there's going to be this very large tax savings for school consolidation and closure, but we have yet to see any real numbers. And there's more, but I'll stop with that for now.
All right, so I will do my best. If you would like to sort of put those down in writing and send them to me, I'll try to give you a better response. Can't define equity. That's a global conversation that just is an ongoing evolution. I didn't hear a question about transportation. You just sort of mentioned transportation.
Cost, like real cost in this process. Like if you were to close a school or consolidate a school or build a new school somewhere, like what the cost of transportation would actually be.
Yep.
It's been mentioned, but still yet to hear any real numbers on that. And from anything we have read in other areas where this process has occurred, transportation comes up in a big way to being such a large cost that sometimes the savings that were proposed in the beginning actually are nil. Yep. So I think it's a super important question.
Yep. Yeah, well, anyway, right around.
It is a question,
so like the numbers for IB, I don't have that. But I will just answer in general. I would say we're not really at a point in the process that since we don't know what our plan is, we don't know what the savings would be. That's part of what this whole next year will be about, is to learn, to study exactly those questions.
But it's my understanding that by September, you're making a decision about school closure and consolidation.
I would say no, that's not correct.
Because we keep getting different answers here. So what is the timeline of September? Like, what
September is when we hope to have the facilities master plan done. So at our last meeting, what we discussed was where capacity falls in. And the capacity study is really going to show us what the capacity is of each school. That's the information we need, plus a lot more. You know, one of the issues that came up during the public forums was a desire to get better, harder numbers about what is the school's capacity, what is the condition of a school, and whatnot, so that information can go into whatever decision that we make going forward.
So is that in process? Is that happening?
Not yet.
Are there numbers?
No,
Not yet.
no. We figured that's going to take a full year to get that information. You know, bringing in experts.
From September?
What's that?
From September? Or
Probably,
like-
I would imagine from September. Yeah. We haven't pinned that down yet. We need to talk with the expert. But what we're trying to do is bring in expertise, do the expertise, and get the information that we need. And I would recommend maybe go back and look at the video of that meeting if you can. And I think that'll have a little bit more clarity as to the decision that the board made and where it falls into kind of the timeline of how things unfold. Anyway, anybody else?
Hi.
Yes.
Hugh McLaughlin, Middlebury. Given the discussion that was about school capacity last board meeting and some frustration over it, this one says that we look at classrooms and you've got to, before you can say what the size of classrooms you need and things like that are, you've got to decide what are the enrollments. So I would encourage the board first to make a decision. When are we going to move the 6th grade to the middle school? Because that, if I were a grandparent and had somebody enrolled in the 5th grade, I would want them in the middle school in the fall of 2020, which is the fiscal year, 2021 fiscal year, from an educational standpoint. If we wait until we resolve all the issues, it will be drawn out much longer than that. But first, let me go back to my prepared notes there, and I'd be happy to show anybody here. This is from a magazine that I just found on the web, and as a former business school professor, it's a nice process for resolving uncertainty and refining an estimate, rather than just asking an expert to make a decision, because you can explain how you got there, which is one of the problems with some of the data that was shared in November of 2018 in that data sheet. It was there. So, but in your next meeting, you're going to discuss school choice. I view that as part of the long-range plan because it can give us some very useful information. In our district, a district elementary school choice, where the choice between schools with one classroom per grade level and some with 3 to 4 classrooms, and Mary Hogan, which has 3 to 4 depending on the grade, classes per classroom, is a real choice. Given my nieces and nephews, some of them thrive in small classroom settings and some of them thrive in long, and I've seen 2 of my neighbors in Butoff Acres who are right next to walking distance from Mary Hogan. One moved to Cornwall and one is homeschooling. So there are parents who are making choices based on school size, even though we have the same curriculum across large schools and small schools. So the reason that I would encourage you to adopt a school choice, and there's an article in the Rutland Herald that hopefully you'll be provided with before your discussion next time that lists the advantages, because Mill River Union and Otter Valley Union High Schools, the unified districts that send to those, have adopted this. I haven't been able to find out how many kids have chosen or not, but in this particular case, I know that there are people who like smaller schools and some who like larger schools, and preserving that, I would hope, would be part of the long-range master plan there. So that's the point that I'm saying. And if there was a draft, I think it would facilitate the discussion, because often it's easier to react to a draft with the details. Right now, I understand from the Rutland Herald article that parents are responsible for the transportation and is subject to space availability. And as a rollout, the first year, you may want to do that before promising to transport bill all over the district in that sense there on it. Second, going forward, I was hoping that the scope of the long-range plan would be more inclusive than what you just outlined. I think that the sooner we get decisions out there with the definition of equity, and what I view as equity, as you see in the article that I handed out there, it talks about, are we going to have a room in every elementary school that can service art and music and foreign languages, rather than moving classrooms and other things like that. It disadvantages some schools, because schools were built many years ago primarily on a kindergarten through 6th grade. I would now argue and hope you include in the long-range master plan that we go to a pre-K to 5, which you'll can draw your conclusions on how many rooms that is from there. To move forward, we're going to have to make some decisions about what we want our schools to look like, and what's the threshold that we're looking at. Are we looking at 2040? Are we looking for that this long-range plan and the schools that we have will last us all the way through 2050? I believe that someone pointed out to me yesterday that Stoneham used to have 140 students in the school. Now it's down into the 80, 78, somewhere in that range, but their kindergarten and first grade classes are large. So there is some uncertainty there, but it'd be much simpler if there were a vision of what an equitable school is, what it's going to do, what services are going to be provided, etc. And the final thing that I would like to do is that people beat up on Ripton, and I would like to basically say some things here. They have a very model of efficiency for an elementary school with 4 classrooms. Administrative expenses are compressed because the principal is only paid a 6/10 full salary. Its propane bills are less than the oil bills of the larger elementary schools. I don't know how that happens, but it's there.
Solar panels.
Solar panels and electric, that makes sense. And it offers 8 levels of instruction in 4 classrooms. I don't see how you can be much more efficient than that. So the question then becomes, if to keep the operating cost per pupil at a reasonable level. Currently, the data I've seen suggests that Mary Hogan was just under $12,000 per student, and Weybridge and Ripton were up at about $15,500. So you're looking at a $3,500 difference there. You're going to have to make sure that all the schools we keep are somewhere in the 100 to 160 level student. And for Ripton, that means building a paved road over to Lincoln, and to getting the people from Rochester and Granville and Hancock to come to that, to be able to meet that. Otherwise, we've got to figure out, it's a decision that was made many years ago, and it's very difficult to have that number so it'll come down. So that's one of the issues. The final thing is, I have a daughter who is in her 3rd year, and she teaches in a classroom like this, about this size. And her comment is that it is very challenging to teach combined classes for a new teacher coming in. We have it successfully done in this district, but as we replace our aging teachers, particularly with the IB curriculum, we've got to look at how easy is it going to be to staff that with people that are trained in teaching combined classes and have worked and done their student teaching in combined classrooms to maintain the high level of quality there. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Anyone further? All right. Oh, I'm sorry.
My name's Steve Cash. I live in Ripton. I don't really have anything particular to say, just kind of a general comment. I looked it up when I was sitting here. My wife and I finished building a house in Ripton in September of last year. My son turns 3 in October of this year. And I look forward to getting to know all of you or some of you, and that one woman I'm going to walk in here briefly. But I look forward to getting to know you and your board's processes and how you guys do things, guys and gals. And also to see how the decisions you make impact my child's education, kind of how that all works out. I'm interested in securing the best education for my son, and hope that you guys all, that's at the top of your list. And I'm also excited to play a very active role, to the extent possible, in making sure that my son gets a quality education.
Thank you. Anyone further? All right, well, thank you all very much. All right, like I said, I'm going to move up the propane bid conversation, and at this point, it's just a conversation, mainly because Tad Files is here and would like to get on the road back to Orwell, I imagine. So Brittany will lead off this conversation.
Sure. So each year ACSD goes out to bid for propane and fuel oil. We usually do fuel oil later in August. But we did go out to bid for our propane. We received 4 bids. And the memo that I prepared recommended that you award the bid to Suburban Propane. Subsequent to preparing that memo, we received a contract from them that they wanted us to sign in order to provide us with propane. And I have a habit of reading contracts before I sign them on behalf of the district, and found some of the terms to be unfavorable and unacceptable. So I had asked to see if those could be changed, and at this point, so far, the answer has been no. So my recommendation at this point is that we reject all bids in the interest of fairness, reject all bids and give everyone a chance to bid again. And I have placed some more structured requirements in the bid, such as providing us with a copy of any contracts that we would be required to sign, so that we know that information up front, as well as providing a list of services, fee schedule for service, which is something that's currently not included in the bid, so that we can have a more complete picture of what we're engaging in. Our current provider is Files Brothers. They have been our provider for years and years. And this is a public meeting, so we did tell the bidders that what was going on. So I know that a representative from Tab Files is here if he wishes to speak, but that's my recommendation for the board at this point.
So is it fair to say that you're basically withdrawing your proposals to us?
Yes.
And I don't think we need to take any action. We'll await
Right.
you to present to us with bids for us to approve or not.
Yeah.
Chip?
One of the questions I was going to ask you before, obviously we changed here, was why there was such a huge discrepancy in the bids.
Yeah.
It didn't make any sense to me relative to, especially, I've known Files has done it for a long time,
Yeah.
and so it just didn't make sense to me that there would be a huge spread, honestly.
Yeah.
And for that reason, I mean, what you partially answered that question was there was some small print that wasn't very noticeable there. So I think I will say that it makes sense to open the bid again because of the fact that long-term contractors for the district or anywhere else, it's a symbiotic relationship. They don't want to screw us because they don't want to lose the business.
Right.
On the other side, having been there a long time, I think it's just good practice on our district to be considerate. So I welcome opening the bid and making sure we have it communicated really well.
Yes. Yeah, I agree.
Like, present any timing issues?
No, right now we're still with Files Brothers. That was as
far as I understand it, have an expiration date. But we do want to get under another contract so that we can get a price locked in.
Yeah.
Because the price
We're
is
not
in.
under a current contract now.
Yeah, got it.
Contract right now on June 30th.
Yeah. All right, so I don't think this requires any action from the board. That was really just an explanation as to why this part of the bid process is being basically postponed. Is everybody comfortable with that? Great. Thank you very much, Brittany.
Can I speak?
Yes. Yes, if you have something you need to add to the...
I got up this morning thinking I was going to come here and tell you I appreciate the years past in business. And things have changed since then, which is hopefully good. It shocked me the difference. And that's a big spread. But I don't get it. I don't understand how it can be that way unless I would lose money at the numbers that came in. So I don't know, can't explain it. But it shocked me also. I've been doing business with the schools since 1985. Work excellent with whoever, like Eric and John. They started out with Bill Kuzno, and everybody's been a pleasure to work with. And I think vice versa. When they call, I'm there, which I hope means something.
No complaints at all.
All right, well, we're not in a bid awarding mode right now, so...
I'm just saying, no complaints at all.
And the other thing I want to make sure everybody understood was if, in fact, they do switch, I won't be able to service the equipment anymore. So I don't know if that'll play into anything, but just make sure everybody understands that. And you've got a lot of equipment that needs servicing in the kitchen departments. Actually, I've had this book in my office. It says Bill Kuzno's days, and there's still information that you guys have had.
Well, for right now, keep it. We've been through our overload.
Alright. I am a small, fair sized company, but I'm only in Vermont, I'm not nationwide, like some of the big guys.
Chad, since we're not making a decision tonight, I guess a lot of what you're saying really needs to be presented probably to the business manager rather than to the board at this point.
Okay.
Since we're not making any decisions on this. But I didn't, if you had a question about the process or a statement about the process.
I understand it all, and I think we're setting the bids clear and simple. Again, I appreciate it. I hope the bids go back out. And in good shape in the end. I'll do the best I can. And I couldn't close. So,
Thank you, and we'll look forward to the next round of proposals as they come in.
all right, thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.
All right. Back to letter B on our agenda. We have draft minutes from July 15th. Could I have a motion to approve them?
So moved.
And a second?
Discussion.
Yes.
I already talked to Suzanne about this, but I found the format of the minutes, and it has nothing to do with the minute taker. But for a discussion such as we had last time, which was, we went around the room, okay? I found the paragraph on the facilities master plan to be very, very confusing. And when I finished reading that, I didn't know what we had done. I don't think we need to have minutes that are like the congressional record, but if in fact we are asked individually to make a specific comment about something, okay? If the public who comes and is delineated fairly completely, if it's best that the minute taker can do as to who's speaking, where they're from, and what they're saying, then I think if there is particular board information or differences of opinion, when we are asked specifically to state them, as we were, okay? then I would say it either should be enumerated, and I think at times, and it's not because I want my name there, but it's because I think you need to have some sense of where individual board people sit on major issues if there is one. We didn't make a decision other than we were going to hire, for a lot of money, someone who was going to answer a question. I happen to have a dissenting opinion, although I didn't vote against it. So I will maybe ask the Secretary, think of a way that, even if it's numbering or something else. I know it's hard, and I don't mean to come down on that, but I found it to be not very helpful.
Yeah, it is, I think it's very challenging for the note taker when we do a sort of a round robin conversation. We fortunately have the backup of videotape when MCTV is here. It's a wonderful service that we have. But I guess I would agree that when possible, we should try to attribute comments as they come around, and if it moves too fast or whatever, Suzanne, either slow us down if need be, just so we know who's saying what. Or since this wasn't really a vote that we were taking, but really more of a conversation, the minutes don't require that we summarize every person's comments, but more just the conversation in general.
I understand that, and I'm not asking for that, but if in fact the minute is a compilation of what we discussed about capacity, okay? I found it to be just very difficult to sort of get a sense of it. I know maybe all of us did the same way, but if it's a record and someone is trying to read it, what does it say?
Yeah.
Sorry, Suzanne, I'm not...
That's fine. I have just a harder time taking minutes at times because I can speak fast or, I try to type in.
No way do I want to do it, okay?
Well, sometimes I type in what I think I'm hearing people say, and then they come back with weeks later, they're like, oh, I didn't say that, and then they go mad at me, so I struggle with what to...
Yeah.
Even bulleted would make it easier to follow the conversation, rather than one big paragraph for it.
Jen?
I'm wondering, do we have an agenda for our retreat? I'm just wondering if that could be a topic that we dive into at our retreat.
We don't, but I'm happy to put that down as a topic as to, especially as our conversations get to be much more sort of inclusive of everybody and kind of free-form, how we need to have that reflect.
Maybe come up with a standard that we all agree upon. Have some time to think about it.
Good suggestion. All right. Okay, that all being said, all those in favor of approving the minutes from July 15th, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? Anybody?
Betty?
Yes, Betty? Okay, thank you. All right, bills?
There were two sets of bills, one read on the 22nd by myself and Victoria. Out of the general account, these are good bills, actually. We should do these all the time. They get a lot worse as the school gets.
If we didn't have to run a school.
Yeah, we have to run a school. First, out of the general account was $48,385.24. A payroll expense of one specific check. I don't remember what this was, but it was payroll related, $45,303.94. And payroll expenses out of that account are $223,206.88 for a total of $896.06. That was the total for the week of the 22nd. Today, Victoria and I read them. There was, out of the general account, $99,521.26, and payroll expenses of $12,571.86 for a total of $112,093.12. that won't last. I move we approve.
That's everything.
Second.
Okay, they've been moved and seconded. All those in favor of the bills being paid, please say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? And the bills are paid. Thank you. All right, next item on the agenda here is our comprehensive wellness policy. We have seen it. We have talked about it a bit. It's been revised and it's come back to us for action tonight. And Mary, are you leading us in this conversation?
Yeah.
Great.
So it was up to be voted on about a month ago, and one of our board members felt that we needed to address the issue of, in the nutrition part, and also children with particular special needs, that we address that. So we added that under the goals for health services. So the district will, when appropriate and possible, facilitate access to healthcare services or referral to healthcare services within the school setting or in the community, and the district will follow the standards of practice, school health service manual, in establishing those procedures. We felt like it was just best to align it with the standards that the nurses have to follow to address those issues. So we put it in there, and then under nutrition, we added under the nutrition standards, which are the kind of the required parts of the policy, we put that in italics because the board wanted to know what was specific to the requirement for, or I guess the government requires this in the nutrition policy. So this is all, everything that's in italics and bold is the required policy for nutrition. Yes. 13. It starts with 9 under nutrition, promotion, and education, okay? And continues down basically through the end. And there's another highlighted part regarding students with food allergies. And again, we reference following the standards of practice for school health services, which is what the state has put out for all the nurses to follow in each of the schools. And the rest is basically the same as what we had before. The only changes that were made.
Any questions? Mary, would you like to move that we
I move we adopt the comprehensive wellness policy.
Any seconds? Any further questions or discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of adopting the comprehensive wellness policy C9, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? Thank you very much.
Yay, at last. At last, we made it.
This was the hard work of the, what do you call the group,
Oh, the policy? No,
not the policy group, we were part of it.
what are they? I forget. What is that? Kyle, what is that group?
Community
Partnership.
They
I've been there with them for so long, I forgot.
They initiated, did the lion's share of the work.
Yes.
And then the policy committee kind of added and edited and did things to kind of clarify it for us. So it was a group effort by the entire community.
What's up next? What's the status, for example, of the student representation policy?
That will be warned in the next meeting.
Great.
Okay, we did some changes on it, and it will be in the next one.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we've done the proposed propane. Okay, we have our continuous improvement plan, which requires board approval. Caitlin Steele, are you up on this?
I am.
All right.
So you have, I think, 22 pages of continuous improvement plans. They are very much consolidated. The Agency of Education initiated a new model for continuous improvement plans in the 2017-18 school year and continued it into the 2018-19 with some updates this year. One of the requirements is that the board approve all of our continuous improvement plans. And so this board already approved, I think it was on April 1st, the district level continuous improvement plan. And now we have 9 school level ones that we need to approve. And what I tried to do here is consolidate that, because every one of them is at least as long, is about as long, give or take, as the district one, and that's quite a lot of reading, but they're pretty redundant as well. And so this opens with the plan that you already approved at the district level, and then includes an abbreviated version of each of the school level ones. I took out the same components for each of the school level ones, so you can see how it's sort of interpreted differently at each of those levels. This year, the Agency of Education allowed us to submit these prior to approval, as long as we promised we would get approval. And so I took that option. I promised I would get your approval. And they've all been blessed by the Agency of Education. I can edit them if you need me to, but they've already made it through the system. So that's useful information, because there is actually quite a lot of variety in how these were interpreted at the school level. And I actually am the one who transfers the continuous improvement plans from the Google Docs that the principals provide me with into the grant management system. It's a lot of copying and pasting, and I let it go through in that inconsistent manner, the way that you see it here, where they're not identical, because it's still a new process, and I want to know what works, right? Because if it doesn't get through, then they push back with recommended revisions and we revise. All of these meet the bar for the Agency of Education. Trying to think what else is really important to point out, assuming that we probably don't want to talk about each of the 22 pages in turn. So one is that you'll see on the very first page that we, where it says collaborative stakeholders represented, and we wrote in the district plan that school and district administrators collaborated closely on the first page of the CIP to learn the new process together. That first page actually continues. Additional stakeholders, including board members, faculty, staff, community members, and parents, then reviewed the plan and offered input and recommendations for revisions. That was true in our first year, and then we revised it in January with the whole admin team. We looked at last year's goals, we looked at updated data, we revised the goals accordingly and updated the plan. From there, I gave the updated plan out to the principals, and they, at their level, at the school level, built a little team to basically replicate that process, to look at the previous year's goals, look at updated data, consider what they had done, what successes they had seen, what their hopes were, and what their new goals are. So that's what you have in front of you. And I wonder, I guess I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. Yeah, Lorraine.
If it was pointed out, I missed it. I'm just curious, as I was looking through each town and their prioritized goals, whatever, Ripton's, coincidentally, Ripton people, they had June 2021, where everybody else's were, so I wondered why theirs was out further.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And one of those things where I thought, well, let's see what the agency is really looking for when we submit these. So you'll see at the district level, we wrote our goals in 2017 for 2019. And when we submitted these this spring, we didn't have our 2019 data for this SBAC, which in fact we have it internally, but it's not public data yet, so it's not anything that we can publish yet. And for YRBS, and that data won't even come out until at the earliest January. And so rather than rewrite those goals, we just held those 2019 goals steady so that we could look at those original goals with the data at the target point we were aiming for and then revise next year. Ripton made the decision in their smaller group to project further out and say, okay, so 2019, check, we just finished that spring, let's look further ahead for our goals. And the agency doesn't have specific parameters around that timeline. The goals do need to be time constrained and measurable. And so as long as we've got data that we're looking at over time and we've set target dates,
Because the individual schools were able to make their own individual.
Schools were able to make their own decisions and really anchorage what makes sense for them and the work that they're doing at the school level. We didn't allow them to write goals in contradiction of district goals.
Right, yeah, and that, yeah. Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
You just kind of ran through it, but when is you said data was available internally but not publicly?
For the SBAC?
And then you talked, I think, about some data is available, but it won't really be available until, and it won't really be available until, could you kind of run through that? It strikes me that you're working with a rather significant handicap in that, and as I remember it, wasn't there a big snafu about data last year in terms of coming late? I mean, this is something that I guess schools are just trapped in.
So we talked, I made this point a little bit when we talked about the strategic plan report, and that we as a district decided that we would present our strategic plan narrative in the winter, and then with more robust data in the spring. And what's challenging about that is that in the spring, when we're writing that, in May, when we're writing that report, the most recent data that we have in most cases is from the previous school year. So now we're in the testing cycle or through the testing cycle for the current school year, and we're reporting last year's data. So some of that is just sort of probably the wrong timing design on our part. We're reporting, I know some of our neighboring districts produce their data-heavy reports in the fall. That would probably be a little bit cleaner. And my recommendation was we maintain this pattern for the last report of our 5-year strategic plan report, because why disrupt it now? But then as we're kicking off a brand new strategic plan in the fall of 2020, probably the right time to rethink that timing, because we can clean some of it up internally. There are two major data sets that we use with our continuous improvement plan. So there are 2 of the 5 that we report in the strategic plan report. So we take a smaller bite with continuous improvement plans. One is the SBAC data, the math and literacy standardized state level test. And the other is the YRBS, the Youth Risk Behavior Survey. And so the YRBS survey happens every second year. And so the most recent data that we have in that is from the spring of 2017. We took the survey again in the spring of 2019, but it is a valid and reliable survey instrument, which means there is an implemented at the state, and I'm not sure how many other states use it. It's a big data set, and so there's a long process of cleaning and validating that data. So the 2019 YRBS results won't be available until, I just looked it up before I came here. I think it said between January and April of next year. So next year we can be looking at what our students reported this year in YRBS. The SBAC data, well, we took those tests the earliest school took them as early as March, but everybody was finished by the start of June. That data becomes sort of almost immediately available internally. It hasn't been gone through that whole cleaning and validating process, and so we have the local level data, we don't have the generalized Vermont data, and we don't have permission to release it. So we can be looking at it internally. That permission comes out from the Agency of Education, sometimes in August, and sometimes as late as October, in my 3 years here. The snafu you're talking about is with the Agency of Education's longitudinal data system, which is new, and it's important work. It has been bogged down at the state level. So there was problem with, I don't know exactly what happened, but there was a problem with the census data in the new system. That delayed a lot of things this year, including the directions for our continuous improvement plans, which came out pretty late in the game, and which is why we have, we did it late, because we got our instructions pretty late. I hope that the data systems will get cleaned up over time at the Agency of Education, and I would expect that they would. And I hope that the agency sticks with this continuous improvement plan model, because over 2 years we've started to understand and anticipate it, and I think that we can start to become more consistent and thoughtful in our own processes if that structure stays consistent over time. Did I answer your question?
Probably, and then more.
Sorry.
No, that's fine. But I'm also thinking you're saying, if I'm correct in what I think I'm hearing, is you have internal data in the spring
Thank you.
along the way that you could compare to internal data for schools here in this district. It wouldn't be public, it wouldn't be in comparison to other statewide things, but you might be able to look at something there in terms of this school system, and I'm wondering, does that get done? And it seems to me it might be quite useful. That's a whole internal data set that says what's happening right here.
Yeah, no, yes. In fact, I started compiling those tables today and set aside a day late in August to do some more of that work.
Yeah.
But this was only the second time that I peeked in to see the state of that data. So yes, it does exist, and we can use it internally.
I mean, whether it's measured across the board, but it seems to me internally it might be something. How successful are we being internally to do X, Y, and Z?
We can, and we need to kick off those conversations with our leaders at least early in the year.
Yeah.
Because the data, again, is not all that useful in the spring of 2019 when we're reporting the spring of 2018 data. And so part of realigning our reporting system would be forcing that compiling of the data into a useful set earlier in the year. So, I'm already doing it for next year, but I think that it makes sense to align our system
useful
that way.
and interesting and probably at times very productive and make you feel pretty good, hopefully.
I have a question on page 6. I'm just reading the data. It's the MUMS and MUHS goals, and it has to do with the YRBS.
Yep.
And so if you just take, for example, in my community, I feel like I matter to people. Goal is to increase from 55%. And then it says update 70%. Does that mean we're at 70%, or is that the new goal?
Yeah, so, great question. So you'll see that the ones that are, we set these goals based on the 2015 data.
Yep.
We struck out the ones that disappeared in the 2017 data. They no longer ask those questions. And so that update is based on, so in 2017 we had 70%. So we had already exceeded our goal on that one. In 2017, we set the goal for 2019.
Okay, so in other words...
We then maintained that 2019 goal just for one more cycle because we didn't change them because we didn't have the 2019 data.
Okay. Yeah. And then the other question I just had is, you set the goals, does the state come back and say, okay, how'd you do meeting those goals, or is it really a tool for you to use internally more than that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there were, if you look at, let's see, where's the cleanest place to have you look at it? Look at page 3. So, and it says on the top of that full table, new in year 2. This is me taking the template that the AOE provides for us on the grant platform and pulling it out into Google Docs that then I can share with our administrative team and the other people who are working on these so that we can work in them. And so new in year 2, this is what I found. This, I said that there was some delay in getting the information out, so I hadn't anticipated this when we as a district updated ours in January because it wasn't in the old model. And so before we submitted it to you and to the Agency of Education, I had gotten into the grant platform and discovered this new in year 2 and made it blue and bold for everybody to see. They ask us, what are the goals you have been working on? And so I've listed the goals again in a slightly abbreviated form. And then they said, so what is the work you have been doing towards these goals? And so we summarized what is the work that we've been doing toward these goals. And then what are the measures? So like how do you know you've been or what are the measures you're using? So I summarized that. And then what are the results? Okay. And you'll see there are references to supporting documentation. Those are full of data tables, like the kinds of things you're used to seeing in our strategic plan reports, that if we printed all of them, there would be reams of this information. So they asked us to actively reflect on what we've done in the year since we wrote our first one. And then I included those 4 items. 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 And then new in year 2 elements for every school, because they actually give kind of a nice reflective snapshot of what the school was aiming for, what they've been working on, and where they see they've had some success.
All right, so this requires...
I have a question.
Oh, I'm sorry,
Is this information available for, everybody in the district, for the community?
Well, this is clean, so there's no data in here that falls below that n equals 11 number. This is in the board materials that are posted online.
Online, okay, so anybody can look at that.
Yeah, and I mentioned in my notes that if a board member wanted to see the full plans, I can share those. I just didn't.
think so.
But I will if you want me to. And I also would like to say that there's really is room for board involvement in the revising and recalibrating of these yearly. So if it's something that you think would be interesting, I'm the person you would reach out to say, how can I get involved in that process? And we can look for the right place to plug you into that system, because I think it would be helpful to get some more outside, more diverse perspectives, I should say.
All right, well, I would entertain a motion that we approve the school-based continuous improvement plan as presented.
So moved. Second.
With Victoria and Mary. Any further questions or discussion? If not, all those in favor of approving the continuous improvement plan, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? Great. Thank you very much for the presentation.
Thank you.
All right. On to our next phase of our discussion of the facilities master plan. How we get to that point, decision points, our goal tonight is not to say we're going to go out for a $35 million bond in 2022. Our goal tonight is really to think about what information do we need, what sort of timing do we want on that information, how that might mesh with the work we've already asked for in the facilities master plan. Sort of once we have a thought as opposed to a concrete plan, where does the public engagement portion come in? What does it look like? Because I think it's fair to say that we aren't going to be able to do it all, and we aren't going to go out for a $65 million bond. Maybe we will, but we're probably going to have to prioritize what goes into a bond as we develop it closer and closer. And we're not going to be able to do that without some significant public engagement. So that needs to be part of the process as well. So I give it some thought. I'll just sort of throw some ideas out there, and then I really would like to hear what other folks think. It seems to me that yes, first question is, we'll just have to decide do we want to go out for a bond. I think the preliminary information that we've received so far would be a yes. It's clear that we, like so many other school districts, have had to go through the difficult balance of maintenance versus educational costs, and making that balance over the years can sometimes result in deferred maintenance, which would be nice to address. So, we, at our last meeting, said that we want to bring in some expertise to really study capacity, to really study building condition. It seems to me that that's something that we should say, as well as look at our buildings in terms of a deeper dive than what we have now, in terms of moving forward to a bond. And I think part of our discussion last meeting was sort of charging the administration with sort of telling us what they think the school should look like. It seems to me that should also be taking place. while we think about a bond. And then, talking about environmental sustainability, should that be part of a bond, or should that be really kind of a separate issue that we deal with differently than sort of infrastructure improvements? So anyway, I sort of throw that out there to kick off the conversation. This one was a little more challenging in terms of coming up with a decision matrix because there's a little chicken and egg going on as how we move forward. So Paige.
Yeah, turkeys.
Yes, Victoria.
I guess when I got the plan for the meeting and first started thinking about it, I found myself in a place where I wasn't even able to start thinking about it. I think it's really premature. That we're not even sure what information we're getting or we're asking for. We're so far from getting the information that we need to make a decision. We don't even know what information we're asking for. So how can we talk about a bond in any meaningful way? I just felt kind of lost. I thought, I think this is...
So I think our goal with the plan is to say, we need more information, but we will expect that information at this point in time, and at this point in time the board will engage with the public, or the board will, start having a decision about what a bond would look like. So it's really to set forth...
We don't know what the information is going to tell us. Maybe we don't, maybe it's going to direct us in a way that we don't need to.
Yes.
Or we choose not to do that, or, I just feel like it's... Yeah, that we're kind of out of sync.
Well, I guess I would answer that and say, we do have some information. We have had a school Duke study and then a follow-up study, both of which pointed to need.
Yes.
And significant need of a multi-million dollar range that normally you would finance through a bond.
Yeah.
I don't know if people are uncomfortable going.
So okay, I get it. So even if we don't do anything in terms of reconfiguring our schools, we'll need to go have a bond in order to just maintain status quo.
Yes.
So that is the purpose in talking about how we're going to go about getting a bond. Is that what you're...
Well, I think that, if a facilities master plan, if we're going to be making changes to our facilities or improving our facilities, it needs to have a provision in it that says how we're going to pay for it. And that's going to be, if it's over a couple $1 million, which it certainly would be, we'll need a bond to make that happen. So the question is sort of where in a 10-year plan does that fall? And I'm not saying we need to necessarily make that decision tonight, but we do need to sort of say, okay, within the plan, how do people see it sort of falling into place? What are our decision points in the future as we go forward? But we don't need to say, we're gonna do a bond in 2021. It's more.
It would be the budget post decision is when we're going to need a bond.
Yeah. Yeah. So do we?
No matter what the decision is, we'll
that next budget cycle. Presumably, if that, I guess it could be then a year, or it could be +1, depending on what the decision is.
Well, and I think to the point of, at the end of the day, when you go out to a community and you say we're going to do X and X is going to cost Y, we need the community to understand, appreciate, support the X, or else when we ask for the Y, they're going to say no. And so I think when we think about this as a process, going through getting the data, us hearing what some other folks are saying, us taking input, we have to then allow for, in the timeline, the opportunity for us to engage with the community so that they really understand that facilities master plan, so that when they go to a voting booth to say yay or nay, they're making a well-informed decision. And so I think whatever we do in that regard then has to build in timeline to allow that to happen.
If you think about the timelines we've discussed already, one being that our capacity study would begin this year, take us through, it would probably take 9 months to a year. We don't really know that, but we figured that would take at least that. And then that would take us up until about this point next year. And then really nothing would happen during that next year because you're not going to all of a sudden make a capacity decision in July that is effective September. So that sort of gives you sort of 2 years of status quo, barring any, disasters. And so within that period, where does a deeper dive into a bond take place? I mean, you could say, well, part of our capacity study should also be a bigger look at our school facility, which I think seems logical. Will we get the information that we need to then spend that next year also talking about the year, sort of not this coming year, but the year after, say, putting together a bond, because we will sort of know what our plan is moving forward. Whatever plan we move forward with, we probably want to do something construction-wise. So that's, again, we're sort of figuring out, okay, what comes first, what comes second.
Well, one thing that's fixed, which is we're talking about it's either March 2021 or March 2022, right?
Oh, a bond you can vote in November as well.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, that's not a big difference.
That does, because if
You can have a special vote too if you had to.
Yeah.
We need to, first of all, clarify more information, especially the results from the community dialogues regarding, for example, the moving of the 6th grade to the middle school, how that's going to affect capacity or other factors that we've been talking about. Maybe that would be one of the things that we can finalize as we determine the need for a bond and how that will affect the size of the bond. Maybe we could talk about that.
Well, that will certainly be part of the capacity study that takes place over the next year, because that capacity study will include looking at capacity based on a 6th grade being moved to the middle school. So you're absolutely right that is going to be a significant factor.
It strikes me that this is a little like lining up the dominoes, like this, and when you hit the first one, it zips along. I mean, the only thing that I can see that's really, really tangible now is the renovation of MUMS and the high school. Regardless of what decision is made with the little outlying schools, all those kids, such as they are going to go to MUMS and the high school. Then the next big domino is 6th grade, because that is going to cause a whole lot of other things to fly. So it's sort of as if you almost have to line it all up and say, this is the kickoff.
Right.
Because you can't take it it doesn't seem to me anyway, that you can take it piece by patient piece, except for the high school, I guess. That's pretty definite. Something will have to happen to the high school. That's going to cost money. MUMS, something's going to happen to MUMS, and the 6th grade decision is a pretty critical part of that. and then the rest of it is up for grabs.
So I just, as our approval process for a lot of these would be as we develop the master plan and adopt it. But at our first, topical discussion that we had, we agreed that part of the master plan would be to call for the administration to come back to us with a plan that would include moving 6th grade to the middle school, not this school year, but the following school year. So we're still working under that premise. So that's sort of lining up a domino.
Right.
Our second topical conversation about what we would include in the master plan was to say we want to move ahead with the capacity study. So, and that would probably take from this point to this point next year to have that study, and then sort of our decision-making on that would take place, but no action would take place for probably another school year. So now we're 2 years out, and so within that time period, is there an opportunity for the board to be thinking or to be honing in on a bond? Because we will have made we will have lined up 2 significant dominoes, 6th grade and the capacity decision. And so, where in there, do we say the board will work, diligently toward a bond proposal, a process which includes, public forums as we've done with the other issues.
I mean, in many ways, the presentation of the bond is where the rubber hits the road around what our plan. I mean, that's really where we're presenting our plan, and where, as Mary said, where we're asking for public approval. So if it doesn't seem like, if we're thinking that we'll have, the bulk of our information in, you're sort of suggesting maybe 15 months. I mean, I think that makes a lot of sense. It seems like we're probably talking, March seems that's not a lot of time for flexibility, and yet it seems so long to wait until November, but it seems, there just are too many unknown factors, and it really is sort of it's where we're putting our stake in the ground. So we have to be really clear that, and feel like we've really got the public behind us before we put it out there. I mean, it seems like all that conversation needs to happen before we make a formal proposal, really.
Right, and we don't have to say tonight, we're going to have a bond on this date. What we have to say tonight is the board is going to work on a proposal, and this is, and it will come up with a process.
Yeah.
That's what I'd like to see us come to some resolution on tonight.
And can we set a goal? Like whether or not we achieve that, I think, and to be timely, I think it would be helpful to set that goal for that budget cycle, because we want to set an appropriate budget proposal for that next year, as well as this is where we're going with it, and to know why we're setting the budget the way we are, and that we're then also going to be working on these improvements moving forward for these reasons. It seems logical. And I would also agree with what Peg was mentioning about the middle school and high school. And so in some respects we're on hold for any renovations or major changes at the elementary schools at this point, but we do know that the middle school and high school have certain needs, and so in order to effectively make a bond proposal, I would think that we would want, whether the school dude study is great or not, we need to know that. And we need to, work with our facilities team to say, okay, are these really the things that we need to do? Is something missing? Do we need to bring somebody else in to make sure, so that we know the timing on the needs of the high school and middle school, and whether or not those needs are incorporated into this bond, or if those are going to be in 5 years, we'll go for a bond for the middle school and high school.
No, sorry.
I don't think it's been decided, and I think that was part of our community dialogues, was the timing and the priorities, and do we hold off, or do we do, what do we do elementary first? Do we do upper first? Do we do it all together? I think was something that was up
And
for
and
discussion still.
again, we need to set up a process where we define those priorities.
Right.
Jim.
You know, I understand why the public, especially those that are here, the few that are here, is confused, because I'm really confused. In the beginning of the process, maybe last fall, we started having community dialogue, and then the community dialogues this spring. The goal was, and I thought, that we would have a facilities master plan, okay, by the end of the summer. Okay? Now, the facilities master plan, at least by what people said, and what I was thinking, is that we were going to make some major decisions regarding facilities by the end of the summer, which is why Ripton, representing a lot of small schools, as stated by one of the members who came, have come, because they are feeling this is an imminent decision. And what we're really saying is that this is nowhere close to an imminent, a decision that's going to be made very soon. We're not going to make a decision before the capacity study. And so I just think we have to be clear. Your domino is correct, but we haven't even set the dominoes yet. I know, Peter, that's what we're trying to do, but I just really find the bonding thing, I mean, I had the same initial response as Victoria did.
I can speak to that a little bit, in that when our committee was charged with this, we did not know when the charge was made how specific the plan would be. And the committee members are free to speak up on this as well. And from the beginning, when we were charged with it, we're like, well, what are you looking for? What kind of level of detail are we getting at? Are we specifically saying, what will happen at each school? And it was never clear. It was sort of an evolving, organic process of let's just, go through this process and kind of see what happens. And my committee at this point is not directly involved in the planning of these conversations. But up until this summer, that's how it went. And it feels like it's continuing along that same route as far as, we don't feel like we have like super solid data to go by. We're feeling like the community's still a little bit, not sure which way we should go. We want to make sure that we have the right data to make the right decisions. How is the feeling that I'm getting? And that was basically the feeling I was getting all through the year with when we kept asking, how detailed are we getting? What data do we need to be able to get to that end result that we think we're looking for? So that's my feeling from kind of leading the beginning of this process, and why it might feel like we don't have a roadmap, because it was sort of, we were just kind of going along.
I just think we need to be clear that we're not making a decision for a long, long time about the issues which are bringing people here.
Yes, well, and sort of the timeline is one that we have discussed at numerous meetings. This isn't the first time we've said we're looking at, a capacity study that's going to take a year, and it's been in the paper, and that it would not be an abrupt change once that capacity study is done. This is not new information.
Well, that came out 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, but it came from a meeting. I mean, we have said this at meetings, for the last few meetings. And because the issue is, we have said that we can't make a decision without solid data, that we don't want to make a decision without solid data. And that solid data is going to take a while to get. So we are creating a plan that is to guide the board, whoever is, on the board at that time. But it's really a 10-year sort of, at this point, we're really coming with decision points, not decisions.
And I can't type and talk at the same time, sorry. So I have to agree with Jen. I've been on that committee with her since the beginning. And every time we talk about and ask exactly what needs to be in the plan, we've never really given any clear answer, I guess you could say. We weren't told, like, you need to look for how many classrooms you need for first grade, how many for second grade.
I think that the charge of the committee, though, was really to help with the public engagement portion.
No, the charge of the committee was to write the master's facilities plan. That was our charge, based on what came out of the community engagement. And we've looked at plans. We've said publicly that we need more clarity, and that we felt that, we weren't really sure even how to start writing it, because we'd only been given one, maybe two examples, Jen? And those were...
We were given some, and then we went out and looked for more on our own that felt a little bit more connected to our process.
And having been in some of those meetings, I think that the process evolved from one committee was going to come up with a master plan to really needing, a steering committee. It was an overwhelming task. They helped, the public engagement committee helped. But when it comes to formulating the plan itself, we had decided as a board early on in the process that was going to move from a committee work to board work this summer, which is exactly what we're doing.
So from the beginning, it's evolved, right? The charge seemed a little different, and then we realized it was so huge that it was a little bit too much for our committee. Other people got involved, and then we realized the whole board needed to own it. So I think that's the longest way of answering your question of why it's confusing and why it seems a little different, because it's just continued to evolve, and we didn't just want to dig our heels in and say, but this is what we're doing, because it just didn't feel like that was the way that we should be continuing to go, in the directions that we should continue to go as we learned more and moved on.
Yes, Betty.
It sounds like we might need to change our discussion to data. What kind of data we need to move on, or who gets the data, how do we get it, and once we have all that, maybe we can then continue our other
discussions. So I think that, if we're going to be making a decision on bonding, we can't do it without the solid data. So sort of circling back to those decisions, where do we want, what do we want to take place? What do we need to get us to the point where we can take something to the public to discuss, not a fully baked plan, but to the point where we can go to the public and say, here's what we're thinking, let's have some conversation on specifically a bond.
I'm very much appreciating, sorry, you were going to say something.
I was just going to say, did you say without a fully baked plan?
To propose, as we need to prioritize a bond. Right? We need to prioritize. If we might say, oh, we're just going to, go for the full 70 million, but I'm not sure we're going to do that. And if we're going to try to prioritize that, it seems to me that there should also be a public engagement portion of that.
Okay, I agree. I'm just going to say right now, I'm feeling totally frustrated and confused with our whole process, to be absolutely honest. And I don't understand how we can go for a bond without having made a concrete decision as to what we are planning to do with that money, and then trying to convince the public that that is what should be done.
Right.
I'm just...
The point I was about to say, I'm appreciating that Peter is putting big questions out there that are out of context as a way to push us all to think concretely about where do we see things falling. And it is kind of hard when our questions, we know generally we know the types of questions, and we've kind of named the categories, and in terms of what does a model school look like, in terms of what does equity look like, in terms of sustainability, in terms of, we've named the categories, but we haven't, without engaging in who we're about to hire, we don't have our arms around that quite yet. So I think that's why you're getting the pushback you're getting, and yet I think it's still helpful to push us to say, what are we thinking about? Are we thinking 5 years? Are we thinking 2 years? Are we thinking, does that make sense? And we don't want to slug him.
No, I don't want to slug it. I'm just saying I am feeling very confused about the whole process, because I'm feeling kind of like something Chip kind of mentioned. This process is not what I was originally thinking that this board was going to be undertaking, that we were not going to be pushing this out for like 3 years before we had to make some serious decisions.
You're saying you were thinking 3 years? Or you-
No, I was not thinking 3 years. I thought that we were going to be making some more difficult decisions sooner than later, and then looking as to how to implement those, getting data to...
But do you feel prepared to make those decisions right now? Because I certainly don't feel prepared to make those decisions right now, because I think, as Amy was saying, we've talked generally about the categories of information that we need more of, but we don't yet have the stuff within those categories to make a decision.
But I'm not sure if this one-year capacity study is necessarily going to give me the information I'm thinking. I don't know. I'm just confused as to the process and what we're going to be expected to be looking for and when to make those decisions. So I guess I'm going to need to have some conversation with somebody and get.
Well, I guess I would just remind us what we have done so far at these meetings, and that is to say, our first one, we discussed sixth grade. We said administration come back with us with a plan that for us to, to put in, to approve in the plan that would talk about sixth grade, and not this school year, but the next school year. We said at our last meeting, okay, we need to make a decision as to our capacity and how we want to size our district in terms of numbers of schools. It has been the feeling I've heard all along that we need more information before we can make that decision. So we agreed at our last meeting to say, okay, we're going to engage expertise to give us the information that we need to make that decision. With that decision essentially on the calendar for this time next year, once we have that information. And now we're trying to put another chapter in the book that says, 3 years out, or here are the points that we need to come to make a decision on a bond. And maybe we don't want to make that part of the master plan. Maybe, it's up to us how we write this. But it seems to me the financial angle of all this needs to be included so that, we have a schedule or, a guiding schedule that says this board or whatever board, the goal is that the board will have the information it needs and it will be able to make a decision on a bond at this time.
I think the level of comfort would go up a lot, and I think this is what our retreat, I'm assuming our retreat is going to focus on, is really what are we asking for when we hire these experts to do the capacity studies? What is it that we want? What does a model school look like? How many classrooms is it? How many kids are in those classrooms? How many computers? How many professionals doing OT or whatever, whatever it is, we haven't yet had that full conversation about what do we want, what information do we want, what questions are we asking these experts to answer.
Right.
So I think getting beyond that, when we haven't formulated, not necessarily the answers, because we know we don't have the answers yet, but we haven't even formulated the questions that we want answers to, and so it's hard to look beyond. I totally appreciate that we need to think about the timeline in terms of the financial piece, and even if we don't do anything, there's going to have to be a bond. So I appreciate the conversation, but I think what people are struggling with, and correct me if it's wrong, is that it's hard to sort of get a picture of where we're going when we haven't even asked the questions.
Yeah, and it seems...
We give you a chance here.
And if a fundamental question is, do we believe that some type of financial support and the process for the financial support needs to be included in the facilities master planning document? So it can't just be, hey, here's a great idea, but we don't know how we're going to pay for it. If a fundamental decision is, do we need to include in that facilities master plan The process in which we are going to go about to pay for it, that is the question. I 100% say yes. We need to take that into consideration when we're thinking about this.
I made that assumption, I guess.
Well, yeah.
Okay, great. So maybe or maybe not, right? Because government has demonstrated otherwise. So we could make recommendations and we could say, we don't believe that there's temperature right now in the community to pay for this, so maybe this needs to be pushed out for 5 years. Who knows what we came up with? I believe we need to include how we're going to pay for it in the plan. That's my opinion. The second piece that I think is also important is when we're thinking about the prioritization, I do think we have to take into consideration and recognize that we could go out today. If we had made our decision on the school dude numbers, we would have been way off in what this would have cost us. So that's one set of numbers that I'm really glad we didn't act on. The second consideration that we got for data was from folks who are more experts in the area, but because of the limited amount of time and access that they got, they said, we'll take a look at this for you and we'll give you a once-over of these numbers, but this is not going to be a detailed plan. So I also don't feel comfortable acting on that opinion because they didn't have the time to do the job that they wanted to do, and I can respect that as experts. So as we move forward, I think all we're saying is let's now get this to a level of expertise that we feel comfortable acting on. And I don't think we're quite there yet, but I think we have to get there. And if those are the two things that we're asking for our reaction to, yes, I think we need to include payment, and yes, I think we need better data that we can act on.
I think the better data, right, so some of the things we're talking about, what are we looking for?
Speaks to,
right, so it's,
yes.
it's the facilities piece and what needs to happen and which buildings we want it to happen in. And I think one of your other concerns is, and then what else? Like, what else do we want? Do we want to, when they're looking at our buildings, to see this would be a perfect spot for solar panels or wind or some other energy efficiency, or if you just button this up a little bit more, you'll save money on fuel oil. So if energy efficiency is something that we want to build in our buildings, you know, how do we incorporate that into this year? You know, and then if there's other things in addition, you know, that we have as a priority that, you know, don't fall into one of those two categories, those are the things that we would want to investigate over the year.
which speaks to Victoria's statement that I 1000% agree with, is our work is ensuring we are asking whoever gets identified in the scope of work tremendous quality questions that they need to then come back to. That is the work, that is the hard work of the board.
So do we build that into our retreat? Victoria had mentioned the retreat, so is that the crux of the retreat?
Well, we haven't really pinned that down, but sure seems to be headed in that direction.
Yeah.
So we can not make some decisions tonight. We can say, all right, let's think about it some more. But and I guess I would say if we do that, let's at least think about timing. So we've already said that part of the plan will include bringing in expertise to look at our capacity next year. I think that expertise is probably also going to be skilled in just assessing our building needs in each of our buildings. We sort of have limited it to the elementary schools versus the high school and middle school, so we may want to expand upon that and do that. We may want to do that as a separate study. We may want to put that out a year. All I'm saying is that we should think about that.
Right.
To me, it kind of makes sense if we're bringing in expertise anyway, and they're going to be in our buildings anyway, that to get that data, we get all the data we can on our school buildings so that it's available to us next summer or whenever it gets done. And we have that part done. Now we may say as a board, okay, well that's fine, but we're going to spend the next year, which we are going to, so next summer we make a decision point on our capacity and our footprint. Well, that's probably going to have some bond implications as well, because if we're moving kids from one school to another, well, let's make sure they're going to a great school. So that requires decision points as well. So we just need to sort of come up with where we want to drop those into our plan as we move forward. But I think maybe we'll let this percolate for another couple weeks and revisit. Are people comfortable with that?
No.
Yes, Mary?
I feel like I really don't know much about school bonds. You hear about them and they're included in your taxes or, you're paying. But what's the length of time it takes from making a decision that you're going to go out for bond and when it actually, is it varies based on what the community support is around that?
I would defer to Chip as he's the one who's got the most experience with going out for a bond, but
Some of them fail.
yeah.
Right.
I'm not sure there's a time frame. Obviously, the longer to have community engagement, but you gotta have something to focus around.
Right.
And the bond is how you pay for it, period. They're all the same. It's only the number that you're bonding for. The interest rate, all that's done by the bond bank and the state. And you're not arguing with that. It depends what it is at the time. So it's the number and community support. So
And actually, Brittany said to me tonight, she said, "Do you want me to stick around and spend some time explaining bonding?" And I said, maybe at another meeting.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
And I'm assuming you only want to go for one bond. You don't want to do stages.
I don't know.
It's up to us. That's what we have to decide.
We don't know that. So we're not deciding, because there's too many chickens and too many
Right.
eggs.
No, what I was saying is we need to think about the decision points to make that happen, as opposed to just sort of leaving it out there nebulously. I think it'd be good as part of this 10-year guiding document that it's got some guidance on, the bond.
Yeah. I would think there's one other factor that we haven't talked about is existing debts that we're paying. And I feel like there was a time in the short future that some of those debts will fall off, and that it seemed like a logical time to potentially then get a new bond. And so maybe that's a timing factor as well that we might want to consider
That's a
moving forward.
very, very important point.
We're getting close to paying off.
We are, yeah.
Yeah.
It's like 2 years.
Right,
Yeah.
so it might be, let's wait until that and
Yeah.
then initiate the new one so it's not as big of a hit to the budget if we have a double debt year.
All right. Well, we'll revisit this at our next meeting. So give it some thought.
Yeah, we haven't resolved.
What's that?
I mean, we haven't resolved.
I think we've resolved it.
We'll revisit.
A little more conversation on that.
Well,
Yes.
next meeting is school choice, right? If you think.
Well, hold on. Just to be, I do want to, that's a topic. Its question is, at what point in our master plan are we going to have a school choice policy? And that policy may be no school choice, but we need to
I think that's a
figure out.
really important discussion as for the board to discuss in a general way, because the rules have changed since we're consolidated, and so borders are changed, and that relates to everything, I think. So as much as the sixth grade relates to everything, so does the school choice. The bonding, I thought, was just not in the same place, although important, but not in this time frame.
So I just want to be clear, as we just talk about school choice, we are not going to create a policy at our next meeting. We are going to create a time frame at which point we are going to make a decision on the policy.
And a time frame may relate to how the board decides.
Absolutely.
If the board doesn't want to have school choice.
Lining up all these dominoes in the right order is very challenging, and that's the point of coming up with a plan. Yes?
Can I just ask a clerical question?
Sure.
The retreat on the 20th, I forget what is the time frame? Is that confirmed for one? And
I would say, stay tuned.
Okay.
Yeah, I thought it was actually on the I thought it was later than that.
19th, 5 to 9.
Yes, so that is.
I have it on both days. That's good. I have it on the 19th and
Just the 19th, I think.
It came as an invitation from central office.
Well, there
So I
was
have
one
that
day where I got like
5.
15 invitations.
Yeah, right.
I just ignored
It's in
them all.
one of them.
That would
So
set
maybe Lorraine was sending us.
Right, right. Those were
So which
legit.
day is it?
The 19th.
Monday the 19th.
5 to 9.
Yeah.
5 to 19th.
Wait, what did you say?
Monday the 19th, 5 to 9.
Okay, I thought you said something about a 30, and I'm like,
No,
oh,
I had, first I did and then I.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
All right. Question?
Quick comment.
Well, we try to leave the comments to the public comment period, but go ahead.
Maybe excited.
Tell us who you are.
Yeah, I was just starting. So my name is Kyle, my pronouns are he, him. I would like to just say I think all the road we're doing is terrific work. But I think to keep in mind, as a resource member in our community, before the board acts on any policies or any agreements or anything, I think there should be a briefing time, so to speak, for all board members. Just, I know for my sake, if I was in a position to get all the ducks in order, but just to make sure there's the best proper way to continue the goals and set them. So, thank you.
Anything else?
One quick question.
Jory, yes.
Can you clarify when we're going to hear from the administrators on their recommendations? Will that be at the next meeting?
On their recommendations for?
Remember we were asking for their input about configuration as well?
Input on configuration or the sixth grade?
Input on the sixth grade, but I thought we were also asking for input on the elementary school question. Or is that already been
No, we
covered
decided,
through
we talked about were they the best expert in their building, and decided that no, in fact, that was too much sort of pressure to put on a building principal.
Okay.
Yes, that's right.
Okay.
Yes.
Right. But that they,
Good-
like, over
good
the,
memory.
if we do bring in some expert, that they would also be part of that conversation.
All right.
Or the administration would be part of that conversation.
All right, anything else to come before the board? If not,
So-
I'm sorry, Stan?
I'm just gonna say, I tried people's suggestion tonight, and I tried really hard from somebody's name, and then what I heard they were saying, and so that whole conversation is really long, but it starts with someone's name, and then there's a blip, and someone's name and a blip. So if you don't like it, I tried. Thank you. That's all I'm gonna say.
We appreciate that very much.
Have we ever discussed, there's software that will make notes from a video, say, of a meeting? You can have the software. It's true.
We have not discussed it.
Yeah.
One thing we also haven't, there is more capacity within board pack that we haven't explored yet. It doesn't go obviously that sophisticated, but we can talk about that as well. Yeah. How about a motion to adjourn? Lots of hands up. All those in favor of adjournment, say aye. We stand adjourned. Thank you all very much.
Very good sound system.